Ada Monroe stands outside her own company headquarters in freezing January wind, hands trembling with rage. Security just barred her entry. The white receptionist smirked. The operations manager laughed. They have no idea she owns this $60 million tech empire. In 48 hours, none of them will have jobs. But first, she needs to see exactly how deep this rot goes. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. If you believe in standing up against discrimination, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss stories of courage and justice. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. Now, let's get into what led to this unbelievable moment. The morning started like any other January day in Austin, Texas. 28 degrees, frost clinging to car windshields, the sky that pale gray color that promises no warmth. But for Ada Monroe, this Tuesday morning would become the day everything changed. Ada was 47 years old, a black woman who had built tech vision solutions from a garage startup into a $60 million tech empire over 15 years. She had conquered every obstacle the industry threw at her. Racist investors who dismissed her ideas. Conferences where she was mistaken for catering staff. Board meetings where men talked over her. She had survived it all and thrived. This morning, she was returning early from a leadership conference in San Francisco. She had cut the trip short by 3 days, eager to finalize a major expansion deal back at headquarters. She wore jeans, a comfortable sweater, no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Usually, she arrived at the office in designer suits, full hair and makeup, stepping out of her chauffeured car. Today, she took a rideshare, looking like any regular person heading to work. The car dropped her at the front entrance at 7:45 a.m. The building gleamed in the cold morning light, all glass and steel, the Tech Vision logo prominent above the doors. Her building. Her company. Her dream realized. She walked toward the entrance, already mentally reviewing the tasks ahead. But before she could reach the door, a young white man stepped into her path. His name tag read, Dale. Security guard. Early 20s, muscular build, arms crossed over his chest. Can I help you? His tone wasn't helpful. It was suspicious. Ada smiled politely. Good morning. I work here. Dale looked her up and down, taking in her casual clothes, her lack of a briefcase. All employees use the back entrance. Company policy. Ada's smile faltered slightly. She had been CEO for 15 years. There was no such policy. I'm sorry, there must be some confusion. I need to get to my office. Back entrance. Dale's voice hardened. He didn't move. Ada took a breath, keeping her composure. I'd like to speak with the operations manager, please. Dale pulled out his radio. Gerald, got a situation at the front entrance. Within 2 minutes, Gerald Potter appeared. White man, mid-50s, expensive suit, perfectly styled silver hair. He had been operations manager for 8 months. Ada had hired him based on glowing recommendations, trusting her executive team's judgment while she focused on expansion. Gerald took one look at Ada and his expression shifted to irritation. What's the problem here? I work here, Ada explained calmly. I left my badge in my office and need to get inside. Gerald's eyes narrowed. We don't hire walk-ins. If you're looking for cleaning work, you need to apply through our contractor. The words hit Ada like a physical blow. Cleaning work. Because she was a black woman in casual clothes, she must be looking for cleaning work. Her blood pressure spiked, but she maintained her calm. Years of navigating corporate racism had taught her control. I'm not looking for cleaning work. I'm an employee. I need to speak with HR. Gerald waved his hand dismissively. We can't have people harassing our staff. Dale, escort her off the property. Dale grabbed Ada's arm. His grip was rough, fingers digging into her flesh. She yanked her arm away, her voice sharp. "Do not touch me. This is a mistake you're going to regret." Gerald's face reddened. "Listen, lady. We don't tolerate aggressive behavior. Leave now, or we call the police." Ada looked past them into the lobby. A small crowd of early arriving employees had gathered, watching through the glass doors. She recognized several faces. Some looked confused, clearly recognizing her but uncertain. Others, all white employees, nodded in agreement with Gerald's treatment of her. Then the receptionist came outside. Helen Crawford, white woman in her 30s, bleached blonde hair, too much perfume. She looked at Ada with undisguised contempt. "Is there a problem?" Helen's voice dripped with false concern. "We can't have homeless people harassing our staff." Homeless. The word echoed in Ada's mind. She stood there, the woman who signed everyone's paychecks, being called homeless on her own property. Her heart pounded. 15 years. She had spent 15 years building this company. She built it for people like her, to prove that black women could lead in tech, to create a space where talent mattered more than skin color. And now, she was being treated like a criminal at her own front door. In that moment, Ada made a decision. She would not reveal her identity. Not yet. She wanted to see how deep this poison ran, how many others were complicit, how thoroughly her vision had been corrupted. "I understand," Ada said quietly, her voice steady despite the rage coursing through her veins. "I'll leave. But I'll be back." Gerald smirked, exchanging a knowing look with Helen. "Sure you will, sweetheart. Have a nice day." Ada turned and walked away. She did not look back. She walked 2 blocks through the freezing wind until she found a coffee shop. She sat by the window, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she didn't drink, staring at her building in the distance. Then she pulled out her phone and called Beatrice. Beatrice had been her executive assistant for 12 years. A black woman, loyal, brilliant, someone Ada trusted completely. The phone rang twice. "Ada? You're back early. How was San Francisco?" "Beatrice, I need you to listen carefully." Ada's voice was cold, controlled. She recounted everything that had just happened. Silence on the other end. Then, "I'm going down there right now. I'm going to." "No." Ada's voice cut through. "I want to see how deep this goes. Don't tell anyone I'm back. Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. And I need personnel files for everyone hired in the past year." "Ada, what are you planning?" "House cleaning." For the next 8 hours, Ada sat in that coffee shop. She pulled up security camera footage remotely, her admin access giving her eyes everywhere in the building. She watched Gerald throughout the day. Watched him joke with other managers in the break room. Watched him point at a black software engineer and say something that made the others laugh. She couldn't hear the audio, but she could read his lips, the quota hire. She watched him compliment a blonde marketing assistant, telling her she was going places, despite the fact that Ada knew her performance reviews were mediocre at best. Her hands shook with anger as she documented everything. Screenshots. Timestamps. Building a case. She reviewed company emails. What she found made her stomach turn. Gerald had been systematically undermining the diversity initiatives she had fought to implement. Black employees transferred to lower visibility positions. Promotion recommendations exclusively for white employees. Her vision, corrupted. She had trusted the wrong people. She had been so focused on expansion, on growth, on competing in the market, that she had taken her eye off the internal culture. And rot had set in. The coffee in Ada's cup had gone cold hours ago. Outside, the January sun was setting, painting the Austin sky in shades of orange and purple. She barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on her laptop screen, scrolling through months of data that revealed a pattern of discrimination so systematic it took her breath away. She called Raymond. He was her mentor, a black man in his 60s who had invested in TechVision when it was just an idea scribbled on napkins. He was also on the board of directors, someone whose judgment she valued above almost anyone. Ada. Good to hear from you. How's the conference? Raymond, I'm back in Austin. And we have a serious problem. She told him everything. The incident at the door. What she had discovered in the files. When she finished, there was a long silence. Ada, I need to tell you something. Raymond's voice was heavy. I've noticed changes too. Over the past 6 months, several of our best black engineers quit. I looked at their exit interviews. They all cited hostile work environment. Ada closed her eyes. Why didn't you tell me? I tried to bring it up twice. You were focused on the expansion deal. I thought maybe I was being oversensitive. Maybe I was seeing problems that weren't there. He paused. I should have pushed harder. We both should have paid more attention. Ada's jaw tightened. But we're paying attention now. She spent another hour on the phone with Raymond, strategizing. They agreed on immediate action. Tomorrow morning, an emergency board meeting. Full investigation. No more delays. After hanging up, Ada allowed herself a moment of personal reflection. She thought about her mother, gone 5 years now. Her mother had been a factory worker in Houston, cleaning offices at tech companies at night to make ends meet. She had faced constant disrespect. Supervisors who treated her as invisible. Colleagues who assumed she was uneducated. Ada had built TechVision partly in her honor. To prove that black women could not only work in tech, but lead it. To create a company where her mother would have been valued and respected. And somewhere along the way, she had failed that mission. Not anymore. Ada opened a new document and began outlining her plan. She would need to be strategic, thorough, and absolutely certain of her legal ground. She emailed her lawyer, requesting an urgent meeting for first thing tomorrow morning. She reviewed company bylaws, confirming her authority as founder and majority shareholder. Then she scheduled what she labeled as a surprise operational audit through Beatrice. External consultants to review all departments. Gerald and his team would have no warning, no time to cover their tracks. The trap was set. At 8 p.m., Ada was still in the coffee shop when she saw them. Gerald, Bonnie Fletcher from HR, Helen the receptionist, and 3 other managers she recognized. They walked past the coffee shop window, laughing, heading toward a bar 2 blocks down. Ada waited 5 minutes, then followed. The bar was one of those trendy Austin places, all exposed brick and craft beer. Ada slipped in, choosing a corner booth in the shadows. She ordered water, pulled her baseball cap lower, and listened. They were loud. Already a few drinks in, judging by the volume. Their conversation drifted to her corner. Company's getting soft, Gerald said, leaning back in his chair. Too much diversity nonsense. We need to focus on actual talent. Bonnie laughed. I've been burying those discrimination complaints. Most of them are just people who can't handle feedback. Helen swirled her wine. Did you see that black woman this morning? Probably casing the place to rob it later. They all laughed. Actually laughed at the thought. Ada's hand shook as she pulled out her phone. She started the voice recorder app, angling the phone toward their table. She captured 15 minutes of conversation. Racist jokes. Complaints about politically correct hiring. Bonnie admitting she had been systematically dismissing legitimate harassment complaints. When they finally left, stumbling and loud, Ada sat in the booth for another 10 minutes. Her entire body felt like it was vibrating with suppressed rage. But beneath the rage was something else. Certainty. She knew what had to be done. There would be no hesitation, no second-guessing, no mercy. Tomorrow, everything would change. Ada arrived at headquarters at 6 a.m. through the private CEO entrance. No one saw her slip in. The building was quiet, just the hum of servers and the soft footsteps of the night cleaning crew finishing their shift. She took the elevator to the top-floor executive suite. Beatrice was already there, 2 cups of coffee on the desk, file folders stacked and organized. When Beatrice saw Ada's face, she knew this was going to be serious. "Everything you asked for." Beatrice handed over the files. "Personnel records, financial reports, the works." "Ada, some of this stuff is bad. Really bad." "I know." Ada sat down, began reviewing. "Today we fix it." At 8 a.m. sharp, the board members arrived. Raymond came in first, followed by 3 other investors and the company attorney. They gathered in the conference room, and Ada presented her evidence. Security footage from yesterday morning. The audio recording from the bar. Emails showing systematic discrimination. Statistics on promotion rates: white employees 78%, black employees 9%. Exit interview summaries. The list of complaints Bonnie had buried. When she finished, the room was silent. One of the investors, a white man named Frederick who had been skeptical of diversity initiatives from the start, looked uncomfortable. "This is damning," the attorney said quietly. "You have grounds for immediate termination. Multiple violations of federal law, company policy, and basic human decency." Raymond's hands were clenched into fists. "How did we let this happen?" "It doesn't matter how." Ada's voice was steel. "What matters is what we do now." The board voted. Unanimous support for immediate action. At 9 a.m., an email went out to all staff. Mandatory meeting in the main conference room. No exceptions. Gerald saw the email and scowled. "Another waste of time," he muttered to Bonnie. She rolled her eyes. "Probably another diversity training thing. So tedious." They had no idea what was coming. The conference room could hold 250 people. All 230 employees of TechVision filed in, confused but obedient. People stood along the walls, sat on the floor. The energy was uncertain, anxious. Gerald and his management team stood at the front near the podium, assuming they would be leading the meeting. They checked their phones, looking bored. The lights dimmed slightly. The screen at the front displayed the TechVision logo. Gerald stepped to the podium, tapping the microphone. "All right, everyone, let's make this quick so we can get back to." The side door opened. Ada walked in. She wore an immaculate charcoal power suit, tailored perfectly. Her hair was styled in elegant waves. Diamond earrings caught the light. Her heels clicked on the floor with the precision of a countdown clock. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Gerald's face drained of all color. His mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. Dale, standing near the back, actually gasped out loud. Helen's wine glass from last night might as well have shattered right there. Ada walked slowly to the front of the room. Every eye followed her. The click of her heels was the only sound in the entire space. Gerald found his voice, stammering. "Ms. Monroe, we didn't expect you back until Friday. We were just about to." Ada held up one hand. Silence fell instantly. "Yesterday morning," Ada began, her voice calm and clear, "I arrived at this building at 7:45 a.m. Dale shrank back against the wall, trying to become invisible. "I was denied entry to my own company. I was grabbed. I was threatened with police." She paused, letting that sink in. "I was told to use the back entrance. I was mistaken for someone seeking cleaning work. I was called homeless." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Shocked faces. Some employees looked genuinely horrified. Others looked guilty, knowing they had witnessed it and said nothing. I was called aggressive for objecting to being manhandled on my own property. Gerald tried to interrupt. Ms. Monroe, there was obviously a misunderstanding. If we had known. Ada's voice cut through like a blade. The only misunderstanding was mine. I misunderstood the culture that had taken root in this company. She signaled to Beatrice. The presentation began. The screen showed security footage from yesterday morning. Every employee in the room watched as Dale blocked Ada's path. As Gerald dismissed her. As Helen came outside with her contemptuous smile. Then the audio recording played. Gerald's voice, crystal clear, companies getting soft. Too much diversity nonsense. Bonnie's voice, I've been burying those discrimination complaints. Helen's voice, that black woman this morning. Probably casing the place. The room erupted. Gasps. Angry muttering. Several black employees were crying. White employees looked at each other, shame written on their faces. Then came the emails. Projected on the giant screen for everyone to read. Gerald's email to the hiring manager, let's focus on culture fit. Code words. Everyone knew what that meant. The spreadsheet appeared next. Promotion rates by race. The disparity was impossible to ignore. Exit interview summaries from 6 black engineers who had quit. All citing hostile environment. All ignored by HR. The list of complaints Bonnie had buried. Sexual harassment. Racial slurs. Discriminatory treatment. All swept under the rug. Gerald tried to leave. Raymond stepped in front of the door, arms crossed. Ada's voice rang out again. Gerald Potter. You're fired. Security will escort you out immediately. Gerald's face went red. You can't do this. I'll sue. This is discrimination. Please do sue. Ada's smile was cold. My lawyers are very eager to depose you. She continued. Bonnie Fletcher. Fired. Helen Crawford. Fired. Dale Morrison. Fired. The names kept coming. The operations supervisor who had helped create the hostile environment. 3 department managers who had participated in the discrimination. 11 people total. Security guards, a new team Ada had quietly brought in that morning, stepped forward. They began escorting the terminated employees out. Gerald was screaming now. This is reverse racism. You're firing us for being white. Ada didn't even look at him. She stood at the podium, arms crossed, watching them being removed from her building. Helen was crying. Bonnie was threatening lawsuits. Dale looked like he might be sick. The room watched in stunned silence as all 11 were walked out. When the door closed behind them, Ada turned back to the remaining employees. We will take a 30-minute break. Then we need to talk about the future of this company. The conference room exploded into chaos the moment Ada dismissed them for break. Voices overlapped, emotions running high. Some employees were applauding, relief visible on their faces. Others sat in shocked silence, processing what they had just witnessed. A white male engineer stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His name was Bruce, senior developer, been with the company for 4 years. This is reverse racism, he shouted, loud enough for the entire room to hear. Every head turned. Ada slowly walked toward him, her heels clicking. The room quieted. Explain to me, Ada said, her voice dangerously calm, how enforcing anti-discrimination policy is racist. Bruce's face reddened. You just fired 11 white people. I fired 11 people who violated federal law and company policy. Their race had nothing to do with it. Their actions did. Bruce stammered, looking around for support. Finding none, he sat down quickly, jaw clenched. Ada addressed the room. 30 minutes. Use it wisely. During the break, 3 senior developers cornered Ada in the hallway outside her office. All white men. All looking angry. The lead developer was named Clark. Tall, confident, used to getting his way. "You're destroying team morale," he said bluntly. Ada crossed her arms. Morale was already destroyed. You just didn't notice because you weren't the one suffering. Gerald was efficient, another developer chimed in. Our numbers were up under his management. Numbers mean nothing if we lose our soul in the process. Clark leaned in. Maybe you're being too sensitive about yesterday. It was just a misunderstanding. Ada stared at him. Really looked at him. Saw the privilege in every line of his face, the complete inability to understand what she had experienced. Too sensitive. Her voice dropped. I was physically grabbed on my own property. I was humiliated in front of my employees. I was treated like a criminal for being black in casual clothes. And you think I'm being too sensitive? Clark backed down, but the resentment in his eyes didn't fade. Fine. Do what you want. But don't expect everyone to be happy about it. I don't expect everyone to be happy. I expect everyone to be professional and respectful. Can you manage that? He walked away without answering. The meeting resumed 30 minutes later. The energy in the room was different now, charged with tension and uncertainty. Ada stood at the podium again. Tech Vision was built on a principle. Talent has no color, no gender, no background. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. Today, we reclaim it. She announced immediate changes. Independent audit of all HR practices. Mandatory diversity training, no exceptions. Anonymous reporting system for discrimination or harassment. Promotion review committee with diverse representation. She also announced investments. $60,000 for employee resource groups. Mentorship program specifically for underrepresented engineers. Salary equity review to identify and correct pay disparities. A hand went up. Candace, the marketing director. White woman, early 40s, had been quiet during the firings. Yes, Candace. Isn't this going too far? I mean, won't we be accused of favoritism now? Overcorrecting? Ada's jaw tightened. Favoritism is what we're correcting. What we had before was favoritism. What we're implementing now is fairness. But focusing so much on race creates division, doesn't it? Shouldn't we just focus on merit? We are focusing on merit. Real merit. Not the fake merit system where people who look a certain way get promoted regardless of performance. Several employees shifted uncomfortably. The black employees in the room were nodding vigorously. A Latino software engineer raised his hand. Carlos, mid-30s, talented programmer. Ms. Monroe, I just want to say thank you. This needed to happen. I've been here 3 years, and I was starting to think about leaving. Now I feel like maybe I can stay. Ada's expression softened slightly. Thank you, Carlos. That's exactly why we're doing this. The meeting ended an hour later. Employees filed out slowly, talking in hushed voices. The energy was mixed. Some looked hopeful. Others looked resentful. Change was never comfortable. Ada returned to her office, exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the day was fading, leaving her drained. On her desk was an envelope. Her blood ran cold. It hadn't been there before the meeting. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten note on plain white paper. You're making a mistake. White employees won't tolerate this. We're the majority. We'll make you regret this. Watch your back. No signature. Beatrice came in, saw Ada's face. "What is it?" Ada handed her the note. Beatrice read it, fury flashing across her features. "We need to find who wrote this. Security cameras, handwriting analysis. Add it to the file." Ada's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "But we don't let fear stop us. Ada, this is a threat. I know. And I'm not backing down." That evening, Ada sat alone in her office long after everyone else had gone home. The city lights of Austin twinkled below, the skyline beautiful and indifferent. She looked at the framed photo on her desk. Her mother, smiling in her church clothes. Taken a year before she died. Her mother had cleaned offices at tech companies, facing disrespect and discrimination every single day. She had never complained. She had just worked harder. Ada had built TechVision partly to honor her. To create a space where people like her mother would be valued. The tears came then. She let them fall. Tears for the humiliation yesterday. Tears for the betrayal she had discovered. Tears for the fight still ahead. But also tears of relief. Relief that she had taken action. Relief that she had stood up. Her phone buzzed. A text from Raymond. "You did the right thing. I'm proud of you." Ada wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders. Tomorrow, she would continue rebuilding. Tonight, she would let herself feel everything. "Now, I want to hear from you." Comment number 1 if you think Ada made the right decision firing those managers on the spot, or comment number 2 if you think she should have handled it differently. And if you've ever faced discrimination at work, drop a comment sharing your story. Your voice matters. Hit that like button if you're standing with Ada, and subscribe because this story is far from over. What do you think happens next when the media gets wind of this mass firing? Will Ada's company survive the backlash, or will her stand for justice cost her everything she built? Keep watching to find out. Ada woke up the next morning to her phone exploding with notifications. 47 missed calls. Hundreds of emails. Text messages flooding in so fast her phone couldn't keep up. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through the alerts. Her stomach dropped. The story had leaked. Tech news sites were running headlines: TechVision CEO fires 11 managers after discrimination incident. Mass termination at Austin tech company. CEO claims racial discrimination, critics call it revenge. She clicked on the first article. Her heart sank further. Gerald had given an interview. A long one. He sat in front of cameras looking wounded and victimized, telling a completely different version of events. "I was fired for being white," he said, shaking his head sadly. Ada Monroe has implemented racist hiring practices. She's discriminating against qualified white employees to fill some quota. "What happened to me could happen to anyone." The reporter asked about the audio recording. Gerald dismissed it. Taken out of context. "We were joking around after work. Everyone knows you can't take bar talk seriously." The comments section was a nightmare. Thousands of people weighing in, most of them hostile. "This is what's wrong with America. Reverse racism is real. She should be sued into bankruptcy. DEI is destroying our country." Ada's hands trembled as she scrolled. There were supportive comments too, people defending her, but they were drowned out by the vitriol. Her phone rang. Her PR director, panicking. "Ada, we need to do damage control immediately. The narrative is getting away from us. Schedule a press conference. Today. 3 p.m. Are you sure? Maybe we should wait, let things cool down. Today." Ada arrived at headquarters 2 hours later to find protesters outside. About 20 people holding signs. "Reverse racism is real. Merit not melanin. Fire Ada Monroe." Local TV crews were filming everything. Cameras swung toward her as her car pulled up. She stepped out, head high, ignoring the shouts. Inside, her executive team was waiting. The remaining managers, Beatrice, Raymond, and the company lawyer. They spent the next 3 hours preparing. Writing a statement. Anticipating questions. Reviewing the evidence again. At 3 p.m., Ada stood before a room full of reporters. Cameras everywhere. Microphones pointed at her like weapons. She read her statement calmly, clearly. She explained what had happened. She played the audio recording from the bar. She showed the discrimination statistics. She explained her commitment to a merit-based culture where everyone, regardless of race, had equal opportunity. The questions came fast and hard. Ms. Monroe, aren't you being vindictive? Isn't this just revenge for a misunderstanding? Ada's voice was steady. Is enforcing anti-discrimination law vindictive? Is protecting my employees from harassment vindictive? I don't think so. Another reporter. You fired 11 white people. How is that not racial discrimination? I fired 11 people who violated federal law and company policy. If they had been black, Latino, Asian, or any other race, the outcome would have been identical. Their actions determined their fate, not their skin color. But the timing seems suspicious. You were personally offended, so you retaliated. Ada leaned into the microphone. I was personally offended because I was personally discriminated against. Yes. But this isn't about my feelings. This is about a pattern of behavior that hurt many employees over many months. The evidence speaks for itself. The press conference ended 30 minutes later. The reactions were mixed. Some outlets praised her courage. Others doubled down on the reverse racism narrative. That evening, disaster struck. Ada was in her office when the IT director burst through the door, face pale. We have a major problem. Our servers are experiencing critical failures. Client data may be compromised. Ada's blood went cold. What? How? Someone with administrative access deleted core files before leaving. The backups are corrupted. We're trying to recover everything, but... He trailed off, the implications clear. Ada felt the room spin. Administrative access. That meant Gerald or one of the other fired managers. They had sabotaged the company on their way out. How bad is it? Bad. We could lose months of data. Client projects. Financial records. Everything. The next 72 hours were a nightmare. The IT team worked around the clock trying to recover the deleted files. Ada called every affected client personally, explaining the situation, apologizing, promising solutions. Most were understanding. But 3 major clients, spooked by the combination of the mass firings and now the data breach, sent termination notices. Including their biggest client. A pharmaceutical company that paid $80,000 per month. Their email was cold and professional. Given recent instability, we no longer feel confident in TechVision's ability to meet our needs. Ada stared at the email until the words blurred. This was exactly what Gerald and his team had wanted. To hurt her. To hurt the company. To make her pay for holding them accountable. The IT director finally traced the sabotage. Email trails between Gerald, Bonnie, and 2 of the other fired managers. They had planned this weeks ago. They had anticipated being caught eventually and had planted their insurance policy. Ada contacted the FBI. Corporate espionage was a federal crime. But the investigation would take months, and the damage was already done. The company's stock price, which had been climbing steadily since they went public 6 months ago, started dropping. Competitors began circling, trying to poach their remaining clients with whisper campaigns about instability. Board members were calling daily, worried. Investors questioning her decisions. Ada was working 20-hour days, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. She barely slept. When she did, she had nightmares about watching her company collapse. Beatrice found her in the office at 2 a.m. one night, staring at spreadsheets. "Ada, you need to rest." "I can't. If I stop, everything collapses." "You're going to collapse first." Ada looked at her, eyes hollow. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should have handled this differently. Maybe I destroyed everything by trying to do the right thing. Beatrice sat down across from her. "Do you regret firing them?" Ada thought about it. Really thought about it. "No. I regret that I didn't see it sooner." "Then you did the right thing. The consequences are hard, but that doesn't make it wrong." Still, the doubt crept in. Ada found herself drafting a resignation letter late one night. Maybe stepping down would save the company. Maybe a new CEO could rebuild trust, bring back clients, stabilize everything. Her finger hovered over the send button. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Ms. Monroe. My name is Catherine Liu. I'm CEO of DataStream Technologies." Ada recognized the name immediately. DataStream was a Fortune 500 tech company worth billions. Catherine Liu was a legend in the industry. "Ms. Liu, what can I do for you? I saw your press conference. I want to help." Ada's hand tightened on the phone. "I'm sorry, why would you want to help?" Catherine Liu's voice was warm but firm. "Because I was you. 10 years ago. Asian woman CEO of a major tech company. I faced discrimination, harassment, systematic undermining of my authority. And I didn't fight back. Why not? I was afraid. Afraid of the backlash, the media storm, the damage to the company. So I stayed quiet. I made compromises. I let things slide that I never should have let slide." Catherine paused. The poison festered. It took years to root out, and by then, the damage was much worse. "I've regretted my silence ever since." Ada felt tears prickling her eyes. "And now? Now I'm watching you do what I should have done. With courage I didn't have. And I want to support you." 24 hours later, Catherine Liu flew to Austin. They met in Ada's office, and Catherine laid out her proposal. DataStream would contract TechVision for a major project. $2 million over 3 years. A massive vote of confidence that would stabilize Ada's company and send a signal to the market. "Why?" Ada asked again. "This is going to bring you negative attention too." Catherine smiled. "Good. It's time more of us stood up. I'm tired of watching people tear down leaders who have the courage to enforce basic human decency." The contract was signed that afternoon. The announcement went out the next day. The effect was immediate. Catherine Liu was respected across the industry. Her public support gave Ada legitimacy. The narrative began to shift. Then others followed. A black female CEO of a cybersecurity firm reached out, offering partnership. A Latino tech entrepreneur publicly endorsed Ada's actions. Female founders started sharing their own stories of discrimination, praising Ada's courage. Tech diversity advocacy groups organized in her support. They held counter-protests, created social media campaigns with the hashtag #StandWithAda and #TechAccountability. Within a week, the hashtags were trending. Major media outlets that had been skeptical started running more balanced coverage. The FBI investigation concluded faster than expected. The evidence was overwhelming. Gerald, Bonnie, and 2 others were charged with federal crimes: intentional destruction of company property, conspiracy to harm a business, corporate sabotage. They faced up to 10 years in prison and massive fines. The FBI director called Ada personally to apologize for what she had endured and to commend her for her handling of the situation. Slowly, painfully, things began to stabilize. Inside TechVision, real change was happening. The new HR director, Felicia, was a black woman with 20 years of experience. She was tough, fair, and took no nonsense. The anonymous reporting system she implemented received 43 complaints in the first week. The volume was shocking but also revealing. It showed just how much had been hidden, how many people had been suffering in silence. Some complaints were against managers Ada hadn't fired. People she had trusted. The discovery was painful. One complaint detailed sexual harassment by a senior project manager. Multiple women had reported it to Bonnie, who had dismissed their concerns. The project manager was still employed. Another complaint described an environment where LGBTQ employees were mocked and excluded. The department head had created the hostile culture and encouraged it. A third complaint showed evidence of a manager manipulating performance reviews to favor his friends, while downgrading talented employees he personally disliked. Ada investigated every single complaint thoroughly. Then she acted. 3 more managers were fired. This time, there was less resistance. The employees who remained were starting to understand that Ada was serious about culture change. But not everyone was on board. Bruce, the senior developer who had called the firings reverse racism, requested a meeting. Ada braced herself for another confrontation. Bruce sat down across from her, looking uncomfortable. He fidgeted with his coffee cup, not meeting her eyes. Finally, he spoke. "I owe you an apology." Ada was so surprised she didn't respond immediately. Bruce continued. "I've been thinking. A lot. About what you said. About how I didn't notice the problems because I benefited from them." He finally looked up. "You were right. I was comfortable, so I didn't care that other people weren't." "What changed your mind?" Ada asked quietly. "I started actually talking to people. To Carlos in engineering. To Felicia in HR. To the black developers on my team who I'd never really listened to before." He shook his head. "They told me things I should have noticed. Should have cared about. I was so focused on defending Gerald because he made my life easy. I didn't care that he made other people's lives hell." Ada leaned back in her chair. "Thank you for saying that. I want to be part of the solution. How can I help?" "Mentor junior developers. All of them. Not just the ones who look like you or think like you. Use your influence to make space for others." Bruce nodded. "I will. I promise." After he left, Ada sat quietly for a moment. This, she thought, was what real change looked like. Not just firing the worst offenders, but changing hearts and minds. Slowly. Painfully. One conversation at a time. It wouldn't be easy. But it was possible. 3 months after the firings, Ada stood in the main conference room looking at the quarterly results. She could hardly believe the numbers. Revenue was up 45%. Employee satisfaction scores had skyrocketed. Productivity metrics showed a 32% increase. Innovation was thriving, with 2 new patents filed and 3 new products in development. The turnaround was remarkable. And the media had noticed. TechVision was named Best Place to Work by 3 major industry publications. Harvard Business Review requested permission to write a case study on the company's transformation. Ada's keynote speech at a tech leadership conference went viral, racking up 20 million views. Invitations poured in from around the world. Speaking engagements. Consulting requests. Media interviews. The new leadership team she had assembled was exceptional. Felicia had been promoted from HR director to chief operating officer. She was brilliant, strategic, and completely committed to building an inclusive culture. The new CFO was Jerome, Raymond's son. He brought a Harvard MBA, experience at top firms, and a fresh perspective on sustainable growth. The CTO was Priya, an Indian woman who had left a cushy job at Google to join TechVision's mission. Her technical expertise was matched only by her commitment to mentoring young engineers. The marketing director was Carlos, a Latino man with startup experience who understood how to tell TechVision's story authentically. And the head of security was Denise, a black woman and former police chief who took the safety of employees seriously while also understanding the importance of creating a welcoming environment. Team meetings were completely different now. Collaborative. Respectful. People challenged each other's ideas but did so professionally. Different perspectives were valued, not dismissed. This was what Ada had always envisioned. But success brought new challenges. A major Silicon Valley venture capital firm reached out with an investment offer. $50 million for expansion. It was a massive opportunity. Ada was cautious. She researched the firm thoroughly before agreeing to meet. The meeting took place in their San Francisco offices. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Minimalist furniture. Expensive art. The partners were all white men. Not surprising in venture capital, but Ada's instincts were on alert. The lead partner, a man named Stanford with perfectly styled hair and a too-bright smile, shook her hand enthusiastically. "Ms. Monroe, we're huge fans. Your story is incredible." "Thank you." They sat around a conference table. Stanford launched into his pitch. "We want to invest $50 million into TechVision. Help you scale rapidly. National expansion, maybe even international. The sky's the limit." Ada listened carefully. "What's your vision for the company's culture?" Stanford waved his hand. "Oh, you'd maintain full control of that, of course. We're hands-off on culture. We just care about returns. But you mentioned my story earlier. What did you mean?" He smiled wider. "The whole underdog thing. Diversity. Standing up to discrimination. It plays really well with consumers. Very marketable." Ada's blood went cold. Marketable. Absolutely. Corporate social responsibility is huge right now. Consumers want to support companies with good stories. Your story sells. There it was. They didn't care about the mission. They wanted to exploit her struggle, package it, sell it to consumers to make money. "Gentlemen," Ada said, standing up. "Thank you for your time, but I'm going to decline your offer." Stanford looked shocked. "You're turning down $50 million. I won't let my company or my mission be tokenized. We're not a marketing gimmick. We're a real company doing real work to create real change." She walked out. A week later, a different venture capital firm reached out. This one had a diverse partnership, 2 women, 1 black man, 1 Asian man. Their track record showed consistent support for underrepresented founders. The meeting was completely different. They asked thoughtful questions about TechVision's technology, growth strategy, and cultural values. They shared their own experiences with discrimination in the industry. They understood the mission because they had lived similar struggles. Their offer was $40 million with better terms. More importantly, they wanted to support Ada's vision, not exploit it. Ada accepted. The expansion plans moved forward. 3 new offices would open in Atlanta, Oakland, and Houston. 200 new employees would be hired over the next year. But not everyone was celebrating. Gerald's wrongful termination lawsuit was moving through the courts. His lawyer had filed motions, scheduled depositions, and was clearly preparing for a public trial. Gerald was seeking $10 million in damages. He claimed racial discrimination, reputational harm, and emotional distress. Ada's legal team was confident. The evidence against Gerald was overwhelming. But a trial would be a media spectacle, dredging up everything again. Discovery began. Gerald's lawyers requested thousands of documents. Ada's team complied, knowing that every piece of evidence would further prove their case. Gerald's lawyer reviewed the evidence and called an emergency meeting with his client. He strongly advised settlement. Gerald refused. He wanted his day in court. He wanted to be vindicated publicly. Fine, Ada thought. If he wanted a public trial, he would get one. Meanwhile, Ada's personal life continued to suffer. Her relationship had ended months ago. Her boyfriend couldn't handle the stress, the media attention, the death threats she received. "You chose the company over us," he had said. "I chose justice over comfort," she had replied. Some old friends had distanced themselves too. They thought she had gone too far, made too much noise, caused unnecessary drama. Other friends supported her completely but worried about the toll everything was taking on her health and happiness. Ada was lonely. But she was also certain she had done the right thing. A major tech conference invited her to give the keynote speech. The topic, leadership, courage, and creating inclusive cultures. Ada hesitated. The lawsuit was still pending. The wounds were still fresh. But Beatrice encouraged her. "Your story needs to be heard. People need to know they can stand up." Ada agreed and began preparing the speech. As she wrote, she reflected on the entire journey. The pain of discrimination. The courage it took to fight back. The cost of doing the right thing. The triumph of seeing real change. She realized she had become a symbol. Not just a CEO, but a representation of what was possible when someone refused to accept injustice. It was a heavy responsibility. But one she was willing to carry. One afternoon, a young black woman knocked on Ada's office door. Her name was Geneva, an intern in the software engineering department. "Ms. Monroe, do you have a moment?" "Of course. Come in." Geneva sat down, nervous energy radiating from her. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For fighting. For showing us we don't have to accept disrespect." Geneva's eyes were bright with emotion. "I almost quit tech completely. I felt like I didn't belong. Like no matter how hard I worked, I'd always be seen as less than." Ada's throat tightened. "But watching you," Geneva continued. "Watching you stand up and refuse to back down. You showed me I have a right to be here. That I deserve respect." "You absolutely do," Ada said firmly. "I want to be a CEO someday. Like you." Ada smiled, truly smiled for the first time in weeks. "You will be. And you'll do it even better than I did." This conversation, more than any award or recognition, reminded Ada why the fight mattered. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in February. The courtroom was packed. Media filled the back rows, cameras ready for the breaks when they'd be allowed to film. Supporters of both sides lined the hallway outside, holding signs and shouting slogans. Gerald's legal team was aggressive and expensive. 3 lawyers in sharp suits, ready to paint Ada as an angry, vindictive executive who abused her power. Ada's lawyer, a brilliant black woman named Diane, was calm and prepared. The judge, a black woman named Harriet Williams with a reputation for running a tight courtroom, called for order. Gerald's lead attorney stood for his opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about abuse of power. Ada Monroe fired my client not because he did anything wrong, but because she was embarrassed and wanted revenge. She fired 11 people, all of them white, in a clear case of racial discrimination. My client's career has been destroyed. His reputation ruined. All because Ms. Monroe couldn't handle a simple misunderstanding." Diane stood for her opening. "This case is about accountability. Gerald Potter systematically discriminated against black employees. He created a hostile work environment. He buried complaints of harassment. And when confronted with evidence of his actions, he sabotaged the company. The defense will prove, beyond any doubt, that Mr. Potter was fired for cause. Not revenge. Not discrimination. Justice. Gerald took the stand first. He played the victim well, describing his shock at being fired, his confusion about what he had done wrong. He portrayed himself as a dedicated employee who just wanted to do his job well. "I never discriminated against anyone," he said earnestly. "I hired and promoted based on merit. Nothing else." Under cross-examination, Diane was surgical. "Mr. Potter, you're familiar with this audio recording?" She played the bar conversation. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. "That was taken out of context. We were just joking around. Joking about burying discrimination complaints. That's not what I meant." "What did you mean when you said the company was getting too soft with diversity initiatives?" "I just meant we should focus on qualifications." "Were the black employees you refused to promote unqualified?" "Some of them, yes." Diane pulled out performance reviews. "According to these official reviews, which you signed, all of them exceeded expectations." "So they were qualified, weren't they?" Gerald had no good answer. The parade of witnesses was devastating. Former black employees took the stand one by one, describing the hostile environment Gerald had created. One engineer testified, "He told me directly that I was only hired because of affirmative action. He said I should be grateful to even have a job." Another employee, "He blocked my promotion 3 times. Meanwhile, a white colleague with less experience and lower performance ratings was promoted over me." A female developer, "He created an environment where I dreaded coming to work. Every day felt like a battle just to be treated with basic respect." Their testimonies were raw, painful, and completely believable. Several jury members were visibly moved. Gerald's lawyer tried to discredit them, suggesting they were disgruntled former employees looking for revenge or a payout. But their stories were too consistent, too detailed, too genuine to dismiss. Then came Ada's turn to testify. She took the stand wearing a navy suit, her bearing professional but her emotions barely contained. Diane guided her through her testimony. Ada described building Tech Vision from nothing, her vision for an inclusive tech company, the values she had tried to instill. Then she recounted the morning she was barred from entering her own building. "I stood outside in the cold," Ada said, her voice breaking slightly. "And I felt exactly like I did in my 20s. Being told I didn't belong. That I wasn't good enough. That I must be there for some menial work because surely I couldn't actually be qualified for anything else." The courtroom was silent. "When I discovered the extent of the discrimination happening inside my own company, I was devastated. But I also knew exactly what I had to do. I had to hold people accountable. I had to show my employees, especially the ones who had been suffering, that their CEO would protect them." "So you fired them out of anger?" Gerald's lawyer asked on cross-examination. "I fired them because they violated federal law and company policy. If I had been angry, I would have acted immediately. Instead, I investigated thoroughly, consulted with the board and legal counsel, and made a decision based on evidence." The bombshell evidence came next. Diane presented personnel files showing systematic bias in Gerald's decisions. Performance reviews where he had downgraded black employees without justification. Emails discussing culture fit as code for hiring white employees. Financial analysis showing black employees were paid 12% less than white employees in equivalent roles. Text messages between Gerald and Bonnie mocking diversity initiatives, calling them politically correct nonsense. The jury's expressions shifted from skeptical to disgusted. Gerald's defense called character witnesses. Former colleagues who described him as professional and fair. But under cross-examination, every single one admitted they were white and had never witnessed his interactions with black employees. One witness made a critical mistake. Gerald just wanted to hire the best people. Diane pounced. Are you suggesting that black employees aren't the best people? The witness backpedaled frantically. No, that's not what I meant. Too late. The implication hung in the air. Closing arguments were powerful on both sides. Gerald's lawyer made an emotional appeal about the dangers of political correctness destroying innocent people's careers. Diane responded with calm authority. This isn't about political correctness. This is about federal law. This is about human decency. Gerald Potter created a hostile work environment, violated anti-discrimination statutes, and when caught, sabotaged his employer. He is not a victim. He is a perpetrator. And the evidence proves it beyond any doubt. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. We find in favor of the defendant, Ada Monroe. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order, pounding her gavel. The jury found no wrongful termination. No discrimination. No damages awarded to Gerald. Ada countersued for the sabotage, but the jury recommended she pursue that through the criminal case already pending. Gerald's face crumbled. His lawyer immediately filed notice of appeal, but everyone knew it was over. Outside the courthouse, Ada emerged to a crowd of supporters. Signs reading, "Justice prevailed," and "We stand with Ada," filled the plaza. Reporters shoved microphones at her. Ada made a brief statement. Today, justice prevailed. This verdict says clearly that discrimination will not be tolerated. That leaders have not only the right but the responsibility to enforce anti-discrimination laws. I hope this encourages other leaders to stand up, to hold people accountable, to create workplaces where everyone is valued. She spotted Geneva in the crowd, holding a sign that read, "Thank you, Ms. Monroe." Ada waved to her, smiling genuinely for the first time in months. That evening, TechVision employees gathered spontaneously at a local restaurant. A celebration erupted. Black, white, Latino, Asian employees all celebrating together. This, Ada thought, was the vision. People working together, judged by merit, respected as humans. Bruce approached her. "You saved this company's soul." Ada shook her head. "We all did. This is just the beginning." 6 months after the trial, Ada stood in her corner office and looked out over the Austin skyline. The city was growing, changing, full of possibility. Just like her company. TechVision had not just survived. It had thrived beyond anyone's expectations. Revenue was up 45% from the previous year. The company had been named Best Place to Work by 3 major publications. Harvard Business Review published their case study, which became required reading in MBA programs across the country. Ada's keynote speech at the Tech Leadership Conference had been viewed 20 million times. The invitations kept pouring in. Speaking engagements from Tokyo to London. Consulting requests from Fortune 500 companies trying to transform their own cultures. Tonight was special. Ada was receiving the Tech Leader of the Year award at an industry gala. She arrived at the ballroom in a stunning emerald gown. The room was filled with the most powerful people in tech. CEOs, investors, innovators. When her name was called, Ada walked to the stage. The applause was thunderous. She looked out at the audience and saw young women of color sitting in the front rows, their faces full of hope and determination. She thought about her journey. From being barred entry to this moment of recognition. Her speech focused on accountability, courage, and the responsibility of leaders to create real change. She spoke honestly about the cost of her decisions but emphasized that some fights are worth everything. "We cannot build great companies on rotten foundations," she said. "Culture matters. Dignity matters. Justice matters. And when we get those things right, everything else follows." The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. After the ceremony, as Ada mingled with other attendees, a woman approached her. White woman, late 50s, well-dressed but nervous. Ms. Monroe, I'm Helen Crawford. Ada froze. The receptionist who had called her homeless. Helen's eyes were red-rimmed. I came to apologize. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it to your face. Ada stayed silent, waiting. I lost everything after you fired me. As I should have. It took me months of unemployment, of people looking at me with disgust when they learned what I'd done, to really understand. Helen's voice shook. I was raised with certain assumptions. Never questioned them. Thought I was a good person while saying and doing terrible things. What changed? Ada asked quietly. Losing my career forced me to examine my beliefs. Really examine them. I've spent the past year volunteering with diversity training organizations, trying to prevent other people from making my mistakes. She paused. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I changed. That your stand for justice changed me. Ada studied her for a long moment. Thank you for telling me. Change is what matters. Keep doing the work. Helen nodded, tears streaming down her face, and walked away. Ada stood there processing. Even small victories mattered. Even one person changing meant the fight was worth it. The expansion was in full swing. TechVision had opened 3 new offices in Atlanta, Oakland, and Houston. The company prioritized hiring from underserved communities, partnering with HBCUs for recruitment, creating internship programs for first-generation college students. Innovation was flourishing. 2 new patents. 3 product launches. Competitors were taking notice. Some were even copying TechVision's diversity initiatives, realizing that inclusive culture wasn't just morally right, it was good business. The industry was beginning to shift. Slowly. But movement was happening. Geneva had graduated and Ada hired her full-time. The young woman was fast-tracked into the leadership development program and was excelling. Natural leadership qualities were emerging. Ada mentored her personally, seeing herself in Geneva's determination and brilliance. One day, Geneva would lead this company. That thought filled Ada with profound pride. Ada had also started dating again. She met Chester at a nonprofit fundraiser. He was a black man who directed youth programs in underserved communities. He understood her mission because he lived his own. Their relationship was growing slowly, healthily. Ada was learning to balance work and life again. Gerald's appeal was denied. He faced criminal trial for the sabotage and was ultimately convicted. Sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution. Other companies started reaching out to Ada for consulting, wanting help transforming their cultures. She was considering starting a second venture, a diversity consulting firm that would use TechVision as a model and scale the impact beyond one company. Beatrice was enthusiastic about the idea. You could change entire industries. 1 year to the day after being barred from her building, Ada arrived at headquarters at exactly 7:45 a.m. The new security guard, a black woman named Diana, recognized her immediately and smiled warmly. Good morning, Ms. Monroe. She held the door open with genuine respect. Ada paused at the entrance. She looked at the same door where she had stood in the freezing cold, humiliated and enraged. Everything had changed because she refused to stay silent. She walked through the door, head high. Later that day, Ada called an all-staff meeting. The company now had 280 employees, up from 230 a year ago. Diverse faces looked back at her. Black, white, Latino, Asian, people from all backgrounds, all working together. 1 year ago today, Ada began, I learned that our company had lost its way. I was devastated. Angry. Hurt. But I was also determined. She paused, looking around the room. We chose to face our problems instead of hiding them. We chose accountability over comfort. We chose to be better. Look around this room. This is what better looks like. The applause was genuine, emotional. Several people were crying. The black engineer who had thanked her during the firing stood up. "Ms. Monroe, thank you for fighting for us. For showing us that we matter." Ada's voice was thick with emotion. "I didn't fight alone. We all did this together. And we're going to keep fighting. Keep building. Keep proving that there's a better way." That evening, alone in her office, Ada looked at the photo of her mother. "We did it, Mama. We really did it." She thought about the cost. The stress that had aged her. The threats she still occasionally received. The relationships she had lost. The nights she couldn't sleep. Would she do it again? Without a moment's hesitation. Yes. Because some fights are worth everything. Her phone buzzed. An email from a young black woman in Seattle starting her own tech company, asking for advice. "You showed me it's possible. Thank you." Ada smiled and began typing her response. Her story was rippling outward, creating space for others to rise. This was the real victory. Not revenge. Not retribution. But transformation. She stood at the window, looking out over the city lights. She had built this company twice. Once with code and vision. The second time with courage and conviction. Both required intelligence. But the second required something more, moral clarity. She had made the choice. Right over easy. Justice over comfort. And it had changed everything. Ada Monroe, once barred from her own building, now stood at the top with the door open behind her. Open for everyone who dreams. Everyone who dares. Everyone who refuses to accept anything less than dignity. The fight would continue. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, more people resistant to change. But tonight, she celebrated how far they had come. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that they would keep going. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up against injustice at work, even when it cost you something? Drop your story in the comments. If Ada's courage inspired you, smash that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss stories of people who refuse to back down when doing the right thing. And here's my question for you. What would you have done in Ada's position? Would you have revealed your identity immediately or done what she did? Comment and let's discuss. Thank you for watching, and remember, change always starts with one person brave enough to say enough is enough. Until next time, keep fighting for what's right. Ada Monroe's journey teaches us profound truths about leadership and courage. First, silence in the face of injustice enables its continuation. When leaders ignore discrimination, they become complicit in perpetuating it. Ada's decision to investigate thoroughly before acting shows that righteous anger must be channeled through strategic thinking and legal frameworks. Second, doing the right thing often comes with significant costs. Ada faced media attacks, financial losses, personal threats, and relationship strain. Yet she never wavered because her moral compass was clear. True leadership means prioritizing principles over popularity and justice over comfort. Third, systemic change requires more than removing bad actors. It demands rebuilding culture from the foundation, implementing accountability systems, and giving voice to those previously silenced. Ada didn't just fire discriminatory managers, she transformed hiring practices, compensation structures, and reporting mechanisms. Fourth, allies matter immensely. Catherine Liu's support, Raymond's guidance, and employees like Bruce who examined their own biases created momentum for sustainable change. Transformation is collective work, not individual heroism. Finally, representation in leadership positions carries weight beyond individual success. Ada became a symbol showing that black women can not only survive in tech but lead it with integrity. Her courage inspired Geneva and countless others to believe they belong in spaces that once excluded them. The most powerful lesson. Standing up to injustice isn't optional for those with power. It's a moral imperative. And while the cost is real, the alternative, complicity, costs far more. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in your workplace? How did you respond? Drop your story in the comments below. If you think Ada made the right choice standing up against racism, hit that like button right now. And here's a question that really matters. Would you have had the courage to do what Ada did, knowing it might cost you everything? Comment number 1 if yes, number 2 if you're not sure, or number 3 if you think she went too far. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss powerful stories of people fighting injustice and winning. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that one person really can make a difference. Share it with young professionals entering the workforce. Share it with leaders who need inspiration to do better. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for caring about justice, dignity, and creating workplaces where everyone belongs. Remember, change doesn't happen because powerful people suddenly develop conscience. Change happens because brave people refuse to accept injustice, even when standing up costs them dearly. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight. Keep speaking truth to power. Keep believing that your voice matters. Because it does. Stay strong, stay courageous, and I'll see you in the next story.